Michael, what's going on? Welcome to the OKIRU podcast.
Thank you for having me here. It's great to have to be on the OKIRU podcast officially.
Yeah. Look, we've known each other for a couple of years now. We met each other at some Vietnamese gathering, right? The AVLD event here in Melbourne, and I think you keep coming up at different events. In the
I was
Vietnamese
basically following
community.
you most of the time just to see where Liem's at, just so I can find myself right here at this moment on your podcast.
Maybe I was following you because all the cool things that you were doing as well.
Well, maybe, but let's just call it fate.
Yeah, let's stick to fate then. People behind the music, that's what you first started with, right? And being an artist manager for people like Vietnamese Australian artist Chong Ali, who you've been able to pump up in the media a lot as well, and really cool cats like Mix Miyagi, who is Nigerian, Vietnamese, American.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, who raps in Vietnamese and in English as well. Tell me about the journey behind people behind the music, how it all started.
Yeah, sure. So back when it was COVID, everyone was locked in, and everyone was basically like trying to network or at least create content with each other online. So during this period, I had somehow found myself in the circle of the cryptocurrency space and connecting with the Silicon Valley tech community online.
Yeah.
Whilst this was all happening, this was probably the era when the Asian Hustle Network was very popular and the community was growing.
Yeah.
So I guess from all of that, I connected with this community that was basically producing events on, on Hub. It was Eric Lai, the co-founder of LinkedIn's Bitcoin cryptocurrency project.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Think Eventbrite, but with like loyalty tokens in the cryptocurrency space. So I'm amongst these groups, joining these Zoom calls, meeting all these cool superheroes. When I say superheroes, they're like, they're identifying as super connectors, activations people, like very, very, very high energy, very inclusive community. And it's very odd that I found myself amongst like, Eric Lai's tech startup community. Lisa Ma, she worked at Yahoo, and she's started working with Eric Lai on this Hub project. And as they were doing the Zoom events, we were approaching Asian Heritage Month in America. And I'm this one kid in Australia, like, what is Asian Heritage Month? Why don't we have that in Australia? Whilst networking and finding my way into this community, I met these... I had been working on a tech startup project before that in the music cryptocurrency space. And with that, I was basically trying to meet people and find investors. But yes, amongst all that, I really found these Asian artists that happened. I found Mix Miyagi. I remember the first time my friend Jessica up in Sydney, she had seen a video of Mix Miyagi rapping in Vietnamese. And then she tagged me in saying, "Hey, Michael, this guy seems like somebody you'd be into." I listened to him, like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's very interesting. Like he's using the Vietnamese language to, with hip hop tones. And with that, it's like hip hop has always been something that brought a lot of like the outsiders together. The kids that didn't fit in, the ones that's always, struggling and trying to find their success. So when I'd come across Mix Miyagi, conveniently, Lisa Ma, she was a part of the Hub project, celebrating Asian Heritage Month. She was like, "Hey, Michael, could you be the person who, curates like a series of performances for this, 8-hour Zoom conference that we're doing called Stronger Together Asian Heritage Month." If you look it up on Google, you'll find it back in probably 2020-ish. So I asked Mix Miyagi would he be open to doing like a spoken word piece on this Zoom call. He was a little bit, I don't know if I'll do it, man. I'm not sure if he gave me the iffy. I'm like, that's all good. At the time I was like, if it's not you, it'll be somebody else. Like, cause that's just how these things work. Right. And I think he found that very, kind of like, it's either you're with me or you're against me type of attitude. I think he was attracted to that. So I ended up having him get onto that Zoom performance. Him, Alan Zhu, VH1 Melion, She's also a Vietnamese rapper in Los Angeles. Who else was there? Noah Lazarus. He's like a Filipino known for Q York. He like Johnny D. Nguyen's friend from Q Media. So yeah, I got connected to all of these people, and I was able to come together with Mix Miyagi, VH1 Melion, Big Vu as well from Sydney. He was also an international student that came to Australia. He's a rapper too. He's back in Vietnam now. Noah Lazarus. Basically a handful of Vietnamese, Chinese, American artists and Filipino. And that was our first project together. That was the exciting thing. And I had to give it a segment a name. And I called it People Behind the Music. Went on Canva, did the whole logo thing. Like, this looks cool. I like this. And then, I printed it on a hoodie, started wearing it. And that event did great. It had over I think almost 800 people on a Zoom call. And, Zoom was all the rage in COVID, right? After that event passed, we found each other, we get we're all Asian. We get we're all, doing music projects. I wanted to create like a digital space for these artists to come together, talk and connect with each other in a way where it's like, if you're in business very much, if you need something and you need help with something, you will ask each other, hi, my name is Michael. I can teach this, but I need help with this. Is there, there's not a space for people to help each other in that area, especially amongst, say, not even just business, but maybe even artists, because it's like every artist is propped up to make themselves look very cool, very charismatic. They don't need nobody. They're just going to ace it, right? But creating that space for artists to come together, we did weekly Zoom calls called, what's it called? The Weekly Plug, where is, these artists from the US, that were Vietnamese American or Chinese American, they would hop on the Zoom call that I organized. The first few times, they came together, they would just chop it up. We'd take turns in basically doing this format. Hi, my name is X. This is what I can teach. This is what I can do. And this is what I need help with. If you let people know those 4 things, generally within that Zoom call, somebody may or may not know somebody who can help them with that. So we took turns in introducing ourselves and doing all that, like the elevator pitch for that concept. These weekly Zoom calls, there was one time I was late to it and people showed up on that Zoom call without me. So at that point, I was there and I was like, oh my God, this has become a regular routine in their lives. And
it was run without you.
It was run without me. And it was really interesting because it was the first time to see community happen in a COVID time, right? And the interesting thing is People Behind the Music continued with Mix Miyagi introducing other people to it. He was like, hey, look, there's this guy, he's organizing these events, just talking and getting artists to collaborate with each other and try and see if magic happens. So he put me on to Chong Ali, all these other artists. Without Mix Miyagi, I wouldn't have known Chong Ali.
Right.
And it's one of those things where Mix Miyagi has been into this for a while, where he had kept an eye on all the Vietnamese backgrounded artists. Right? So he very much put me on, and he's been very vocal about, how hip hop has been a thing in Vietnam for a long time. Right? He talks about this, and it's funny because, the communities that are doing and performing hip hop or performing rap in Vietnam, they're doing it in the Vietnamese language. It's interesting at this point where we have a, biracial, Vietnamese, Nigerian, dropping bars, straight bars.
Exactly.
Right? But it's because before Mix Miyagi, I probably would have been like, oh, Vietnamese rap, there used to be like Lil C. There was like a few artists that I remember, not Lil Craze. Who was it? Do you remember any of Vietnamese?
No.
Lil Knight. His name was Lil Knight.
No,
Lil Knight. I'm a heartbreaker. Na 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 na. No, okay. Anyway, but beyond those one or few tracks that you were into, that they were Vietnamese by Vietnamese artists, it was just known as fob music to me, right? We just registered as, if it ain't Cải Lương, it's fob music, and it's like popular fob music.
You don't relate to it as much.
But so my People Behind the Music being evolved with Mix Miyagi, over time I was like, I'd always went, it's probably better this guy finds a manager in America to, help him. So I didn't really try and get involved that way back in 2020. It was only maybe in the last few years that he'd asked me, and I was happy to go. I know I'm going to trial this and probably going to mess it up, but let's give it a crack. I'll help you in whatever way I can. And so video editing and basically playing with clips was what I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Being able to very much kind of use music videos in a way where it's it's catchy, being able to get somebody's attention through content. So I think from that direction, I helped and tried to basically remix some of the content. You can always repurpose content in that way.
Yeah.
And as I did that, I was trying to see, okay, should I work with the other Vietnamese Australian artists like Chong Ali? And so, from there, that this kind of resonance with like Vietnamese Australian artists and Vietnamese American artists kind of got me into this direction where I really wanted to see if this could be something that lands and build a fan base, because the whoever's able to execute on this well ends up being able to take charge for Vietnamese rap as being cool or Vietnamese hip hop being cool internationally outside of Vietnam. Right. Sorry, just to backpedal, there was a after we'd done that event, there was we did a cipher, a rap cipher with who was it? It was Noah Lazarus, Melion, Alan Zhu, as well as there's the other Filipino rapper, Heaven No, and who else was there? Big Vu. That's it. Those five. Big Vu was the producer, so he basically went, "Hey, which beat do you want to?" Which beat? I made a few beats, pick one, and then basically everyone get on the cipher, and I basically just glad rapped it with people behind the music. And I was like, this is a really great collaboration, a great project that came out of it. And so we started releasing music, and a part of me was like, I'm building this community, I'm generating like a creative product, and it was my job to promote it. So I basically chopped up everybody's music video. in where if they didn't give me their video of them performing the actual lyric, I would deep dive into their music video, find their lips where they're saying their bars,
right,
and stitch that on, because then rappers tend to rap in bars that they consistently go back to.
Of course, yep.
So it was interesting to find like these artists, their go-to move when it comes to rapping, and then being able to stitch that into a new product that they've made. And it was very interesting. It was very exciting. I really enjoyed it, because I think getting a bunch of people who are on their own journeys of performance, creative expression, and getting them to come together like as if it's like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or the Avengers was just absolutely mind-blowing. So I really enjoyed that. I've got another. We do have another cipher install. We will be working on that, featuring Mix Miyagi, Chung Ali, Noah Lazarus again, the anime, and it's those four people. Did I say Chung Ali?
Yeah.
Did but that's how people behind the music came together.
How did you get into hip hop then, as a young boy from the western suburbs of Melbourne? Right, you're talking about this, or the Outcasts listens to hip hop as a way to rebel or to identify with the struggles of what was the ghettos or the projects of America at that time, right?
I think Eminem. Eminem, I think Mockingbird was like the first proper CD I ever got. And so taking that, listening to that and going, this man is telling a story in the form of music bars. This is insane. And so, hearing that and playing basketball in a school of Vietnamese, Filipinos, like hip hop was all the rage, you'd get into like the new YG stuff and everything. So hip hop gave you that mental space to feel, if I'm not accepted, there are other people also expressing that they're not accepted. And, in high school, you're trying to find out who you are. And if you don't have that, you don't have your clique, you know what I mean? Like Filipinos have their cliques, You know what I mean? Like if you played ball, you were a part of them. If you were with the Vietnamese, depending on which Vietnamese you hung out with, either it's the connected Vietnamese or it's the Vietnamese that aren't really hanging out with the connected Vietnamese. It's the ones that are like, oh yeah, you in the library studying, you're doing well, you trying to work hard. I was the chubby Vietnamese kid trying to play basketball to lose weight. And basically the Vietnamese groups were like, man, you would try hard. Stop that. Just stop trying to do stuff that's like, you're not in a basketball team. You ain't hanging out with these Filipinos after school or nothing. Like, come on, man. So I kept playing and I lost weight. You know, it's hard to believe now because I'm like the way I am. But back then I played basketball till up to year 12.
Yeah.
And like basketball, hip hop, and one. That was, you know,
Part
and
of the
one
culture for you.
mixtapes.
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
hip hop, man. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you couldn't play basketball and not be into hip hop, and vice versa. You know.
Yeah, and how about this transition from people behind the music, and you're still working on that, right? With the cipher coming out soon, but also this transition to more traditional media with SBS Vietnamese, because that was a staple for most Vietnamese families. 7 p.m. on without fail. This was before the internet, right? So this is your daily news source for your family, for them to be connected. And yeah, I'd love to find out like your experiences there and being connected from, I guess, more modern takes of media now into traditional forms of media as well, and a giant platform nationally.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I was kind of becoming the Nick Fury and finding these different Avengers of the Vietnamese culture that were like, I would see as heroes, like Chong Ali, Mix Miyagi, these artists like Big Vu, like they were these Avengers in different parts of their world. And I felt like I need to be able to, you know, either promote them or help them, you know, get more exposure. So my work with SBS Vietnamese came from a place of, maybe I can get onto SBS Vietnamese and either get Chung Ali on a bigger platform, right? Because he had this song called, Một Bài Thơ, right?
Yes.
And that song was about, you know, a cousin in Vietnam saying, why don't you write raps in Vietnamese and, you know, you might blow up.
Yeah.
And when you know, it gave me that shudder where I was like, this is so real because, you know, that song translates so much with like, you know, having distant cousins overseas and trying to do your thing in Australia.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, cousins and family overseas, extended family overseas, watching your adventure or your journey was, you know, because I was very close to my cousins in Vietnam, so I always felt that was important. So the main agenda getting onto SBS was trying to put Chong Ali on. You know what I mean? So, you know, there was an opening and I applied and I showed them videos and interviews of Maria Tran, an actor up in Sydney who does a lot of action movies. And yeah, I went in there with the direction of, you know what, I'm a video producer. I enjoy editing and kind of, you know, ripping videos apart and trying to see what magic happens. I didn't think about my Vietnamese being that great at the time. I keep in mind that when I went to, you know, every Vietnamese kids get sent to Vietnamese school on the weekends. I dropped out in year 11 because I was studying Japanese in high school. And, you know, I chose to graduate studying year 12, Japanese. But now, ironically, my job is to translate as well as, you know, produce Vietnamese packages of news and a current affair. In hand with that, featuring community stories, producing video content. So my blade and edge in was, you know, I'm video equipped. I'm video, you know, my direction was being able to produce video content. Whereas SBS audio or SBS radio has always been about audio content. So yeah, going into that now, you know, it's been about a year and I've successfully put Chong Ali on. I got Một Bài Thơ heard on the radio. And yeah, for me, I was like, I was able to help a person who's all the way up in Queensland whilst I'm here in Melbourne, having this, you know, online relationship where, you know, we're trying to see how we can amplify them. Yeah, I was able to do that on SBS Vietnamese. And so it's very interesting that the place where I find myself now is, I guess, the direction of how you show those stories, right? I'm interviewing a lot of different people of different generations, and for myself, because of my relationship with my mum and how my Vietnamese has grown through talking to her a lot, trying to have that conversation with other Vietnamese parents, what their expectations are of their children. I want them to be able to say, I'm proud of my child on the radio.
Yeah.
And I want the other end of the spectrum too, where I want the child to be like, I'm proud of my mum beating my ass, because in the day, I'm doing all that I'm doing just purely to, get the roses from my mum and dad. I'm not trying to do this for street kudos. I just want my mum and dad to be happy, proud of me, because I think that's what drives everybody. Because we're not, let's be real, Vietnamese kids aren't, the most, how do I say this? Our parents don't say I love you through word of mouth. It's, mày hút bụi chưa? Mày lau nhà chưa? That means, have you mopped the house? Have you vacuumed the house yet?
Yeah.
That's them saying, I love you and I miss you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we just...
Sounds different from my family, but...
Okay. See, being Vietnamese ain't the same for everybody.
Have you eaten yet?
Okay,
that's the normal one, right?
Yeah, well, see, she doesn't even have to ask me anymore. Look at my size. Explains to you why she stops asking that question. Because I'll be home and be like, I don't even have to ask where the food is. I'll be like, fridge 1, fridge 2. Don't worry, Mum, I fixed that. You don't have to tell me that was there. I finished it. So, you know what I mean?
But tell me about... Look, I'm interested in bridging those intergenerational stories, right? So who have you interviewed so far that's kind of stuck out? Because you featured me a couple of times on SBS talking about my travels, right? And I thought that was such a beautiful experience to harness the language of my ancestors that I thought that wasn't good enough to be put on and being interviewed by. And I definitely fumbled my way through it, but I think your patience and your level of Vietnamese, you're able to guide others in there. And I think that's really powerful in the role that you play, especially given how important SBS Vietnamese was for our parents and that news and culture source, and continuing that legacy and bridging that gap right now for different generations.
Are you asking me which is my favorite guest, or which guest I feel like is most, I guess, which story am I most proud of?
Yeah.
The proudest stories, I mean, I think about it as, okay, certain stories that I find an accolade in. So the Chong Ali story, to basically encapsulate his journey from being this, 20-year-old, I want to be a rapper, to now being, he's not 20 anymore. You know what I mean? He's been a rapper for a while, but he started off in a rap group. And so for me to put that story, to basically encapsulate that story in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I feel is a very great privilege.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one thing to be, he's doing something cool, he's doing something at the time, but to glad wrap a person's story from A to B, I find is very, it's a great privilege. It just feels great. Then the next interview that I did, the interview that I'm feeling I really like now, is the Vietnam War veteran and his Vietnamese wife.
Yeah.
It's funny, I took that couple out to lunch first before any word of putting them on the radio. And, just for context, their story is one of, Vietnamese war veteran he's a English guy who basically enrolled in the Australian Regular Army, went to Vietnam, met this woman, hotel receptionist, brought her to Australia, because that'd be her first time back, in 1971 or 1970.
Yeah.
And she told him that her brothers and sisters in Vietnam still need to come over, when in fact they're actually her children from her past arranged marriage husband.
Wow.
Yeah. So that one's getting a lot of views and clicks now. I produced these reels that kind of was able to get the attention of many, and their story is very cute. I think the fact that people are asking for a full interview in English, which was interesting, because I did that interview in English for the husband, in Vietnamese for the wife. But the wife technically speaks more English in her relationship now, because her husband is Australian, right?
Yeah,
they speak English. So even for her, it felt like I'm not good at Vietnamese. What are you making me speak Vietnamese for? But yeah, that's the current story that's very popular now. But yeah, I think amongst that,
But also Nam's story, like we featured Nam on the podcast here
Yeah.
as well, but it was very moving piece that you did with him in Vietnamese because of his dad's call for help
Yeah.
on SBS the first time all those
Yeah.
years back, right? How's that story impacted you personally? If you want to share maybe the gist of it as well.
I've that story is relatively sensitive, and it's also something that is very personal to Nam. Just for
Yeah,
context, so
sure.
everyone can understand, during the 30th of April, like the that particular date, I was getting Vox Pop's Voice of the People from different Vietnamese Australians from different generations on what they feel about that day. And Nam, I remember Nam's message saying, "Oh yeah, I'd love to be able to say something," which you connected me with. When he was able to be a part of that, he told me that he was actually very. His dad was religiously watching it, and that's when I took on to listen to your podcast about how you guys how he talked about it too. And it's very interesting to do that, that cycle of life where his dad's calling in for help about, his son's challenges. And then almost 30 years later, he's on that same radio station talking about how to find help in that particular area, right? So that's definitely a story that's very significant. I'm waiting until I really want Nam to be able to see the reels and stories that I'm creating of other stories, for him to really be open and sharing that in the English context, right? Because it's a very sensitive and taboo thing. But I see the man. Yeah, I see how he is, and I see when I did that interview with Nam, he's he's actually very locally yokel Vietnamese. I don't know if you heard it. I really enjoyed his Vietnamese. He's but the Vietnamese that those born here use and the Vietnamese in Vietnam use, or the profession,
Completely different. Yeah.
It's it's a different way to understand it, right?
Well, I've been told I speak Vietnamese like what is it, 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
4 out of 10, and over a couple of months I improved it for 5 out of 10. But I speak the capacity of half of a real Vietnamese person, right? That's what I've been told. And I've always admired the way you speak, because you speak, the word's called Joy Jay, flows very well, right? Like you said, local yokel. How did you build this capacity to speak that people who are from Vietnam and born and raised there think that, this guy can really speak?
Well, for context, local yokel, I think I remember hearing that word from some TV show. I'm a local yokel. I think it was Adam Sandler or something. But to speak in a way where it sounds like confident, I would say a lot of that is probably being told off by my mum.
Yeah.
Your relationship, I always associate how good you are at your mother's tongue with the relationship with your mother. And it's not always positive, because I used to very much say and share with people, your mother's tongue is only sharpened when it battles with the mother, because certain words would just pop up out of nowhere to explain what it is that you mean to your parents that you didn't even think that you knew. For context, when you say are you asking me how do I feel about my, I guess,
how did you develop your Vietnamese capacity as well? Because it's quite unique for somebody that was born and raised here in Australia to speak Vietnamese so well. Right? And to be able to guide people on SBS radio to speak and to be confident in their mother's tongue and to share a story as well, because you provide quite a helping hand to guide those conversations. And when we're stuck for words, you're like, all right, use this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think to speak casually at home, I think it's naturally my relationship with my mum as well as my relationship with Vietnam. Going back home, like I didn't really recognize it now, but it's quite a luxury to have gone home every single year, end of year for that, to hang out with your grandma, your cousins, your uncles and aunts. Right, my mum's side is like 9 people, like nine
siblings.
Bác 2, 3 tới bác cậu chính, right? My dad's side, he's number 12 of 12 children.
Damn.
So bác 2 down to chú Hoàng, the 12th son. So yeah, going back to Vietnam a lot, I I would always hang out with my cousins. And because they were relatively my age, they would always take me out on their scooters. And realistically, when they took me out, I was able to hear a lot of their colloquialisms. You know how like every era or generation has certain memes or words that they're into? Like, you know, that's gangster, right? Vietnamese will have like another one of their own. One of them that I picked up was, that's lame, right?
Okay.
In Vietnamese, it goes, nhảm quá, nhảm quá.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can say that's lame in that language, I was like, oh, this is the Vietnamese I'm not learning with my mom.
True. Yeah.
Right? So I'm out and about with these cousins, learning how they shoot the shit. And then when I come home, she's like, it's time for you to mop and vacuum the house. And I'm like, that's lame Vietnamese. Get a slap in the face. And at that point, you're like, okay, that's how you use Vietnamese selectively. So yes, certain Vietnamese flows well. My language, my proficiency has probably come from having that relationship with my cousins. Even at some point, like trying really hard to even communicate by text. Because communicating by text really helped me with the written language.
True.
And I'd even remember certain conflicts and fights that I'd have with my mum, my parents. I would always text my mum as a resolution because I could only Google Translate what I want in English into Vietnamese. And then from there, figure out which one makes proper sense. So I'd been translating my self-expression to my mum before I'd gone to SBS Vietnamese.
Yeah, right.
And I think with that, whenever my mum cuts my hair or we spend time together, I'd also try to understand what this particular means. Why does this make sense in Vietnamese but doesn't make sense in English? And my mum's doing the same because she's learning English through her life here as well. She's a hairdresser. She'd ask me like, why are these people saying hello, honey, hello, darling? And I'm like, it's Australia's way of making people feel comfortable.
Sweetie.
And you know, me and my mum, and it's funny because I would never use it. But you know, my mum sees other people do it, and it's funny. I talked to her about this yesterday. I told her, Mum, don't use honey or darling. The honey and darling being said by the other fluent speakers are, hey, darl, how are you going, honey? Right? Oh, that's great. Sit down, hun. Right?
Yeah.
When you say hun or darling, you think you're saying what they're saying. But to the generic Aussie person, hi, honey, hi, darling, that is a different call for a different segment of Asians. Right?
Yeah.
To the Australian, you're like, oh, yeah, hi, honey, hi, darling. Oh, yeah, love me long time. That's the type of shit that you just like.
Yeah, stay away.
It's not the same as a person saying honey, hi, darling in Australia, right? So I think me and my mum's relationship of learning English together as well as learning Vietnamese together, it's completely not intentional. It's more merely navigating the world because there was a period where I remember when I was younger, she tells a story with her friends. You know, those like when you go to school, it's like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down to Z. She has me sit down. She sticks that sticker on a cupboard. She's holding like a stick that she hits you with. And she goes, read this. Đọc đi, right? It's always A, B, C, D. I start singing it and she hits me. She's like, không có được ca. Phải đọc, right? So I'd be like, A, B, C, D, E, F, right? And as soon as it sounded like it was singing, she hit me.
What the?
So it was one of those moments where I was just like, this woman wants me to know these off by heart, but not really use Australia's version of how to teach this.
Right. Yeah.
So she'd always been strict in wanting me to perform academically. And it's funny, at the time I hated her for it. But now growing up, it's a really weird. Life has its ironic moments. When I applied for the job, my mum was like, I don't think you should place too much hope in this.
Yeah.
Like, con không nên bỏ nhiều hy vọng vô cái công việc này.
Yeah.
To me, I was just like, how can you say that? Watch me. I'm gonna do this.
Right. Yeah.
Watch me.
Prove her wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like those. I have those. I've had those moments twice in my life where, you know, my math teacher was just like, I don't think you should be a part of the advanced math methods 1 and 2. I'm like, I heard you say that. Watch this.
It's interesting from like an Asian upbringing compared to a more Western upbringing or an Australian, white Australian. upbringing? Because your mum's like, caution to the wind, hey, be careful the risks, be careful, you're going to hurt yourself. And white Australians, oh, you can do it, champ. Yep, you're a legend, you can do it, and go nuts. Right? So it's interesting how, the different upbringings as well, and your mum teaching you the alphabet in Vietnamese intonations, right? And
it's like
these two systems.
It's the positive reinforcement and the kind of I don't want to say negative reinforcement, but one approach instills confidence in you to be able to do it and execute.
Yeah.
The other one is more stick in the lines, stay in these lines, but prove me wrong. I feel like when I say prove me wrong, I mean, let's see how well you'll do. It's never really, you can do it. Do you know what I mean? It's always study hard, do well. That's what I'm hoping. But it's never, I believe you can do it. I believe you can achieve it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's just not in Vietnamese vocabulary. Maybe it's not in Vietnam, it's not how the parents taught their kids, maybe. But if you think about kind of the history, you kind of very much, the word's not, I guess you embrace it. You're like, your parents didn't teach you how, didn't operate with you like that, so you'll operate with me like that. And then it makes me think about how I would operate with my kids. And it's interesting. It's you have to think about what, I guess, what framework you want to go towards. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I guess the Vietnamese framework, knowing that it's my job now, I think, I will have my kids most definitely understand Vietnamese. But also English is the word that we operate our life and economics on. So naturally they're going to speak better at that. But I just still don't want, I don't want that generation where you're a walking Asian kid and you're like, don't speak a lick of Vietnamese, but Vietnamese though. But you know what? I eat pho and bún bò, that makes me Vietnamese. I'm sitting here and be like, all right, cool. Because, but it's really weird. We're in that mid-stake. Because international students will come over and like, man, we Vietnamese, we do this, we do that. And you got the ones born here that are like, I'm Vietnamese, I do this and I do that. But I'm not really I can't go all the way. I can't fully go bar for bar with you. You know what I mean? But and it's kind of embracing that. And then really, I don't know, I guess there's nothing wrong with going the whole, I eat Vietnamese food, that makes me Vietnamese, really. But it's, I think it's showing like the openness to learn, you know what I mean? And embracing the, like the Vietnamese phrases you have. Like, I don't know if your parents, do they teach you in Vietnamese? Do they discipline you in Vietnamese?
Yeah, as a kid, I think similar to you.
I don't know.
We had in my house, we had a joy longa, which is the feather duster, right? Yeah. The long end of that. And my old man used to like scare me. He's like, lie down, and it would hit me with that if I did something wrong, right? But I think it was more of putting the fear in my eyes rather than actually like whacking me as well. So it didn't hurt, but he put the fear of God in your eyes. That's
Did he whack you?
Sure. Oh with the end of a feather duster, right?
Make sure you understand that pain.
No, it wasn't painful. Looking back, it wasn't painful, but there was the psychological pain from that.
I think it wasn't Vietnamese parents specialize in psychological pain. I think they specialize in psychological, not even just manipulation, but embedding fear into you. Because I don't know what lines you remember, but there was always these lines that my mum would say when you're in shit. You're like, lát mày giờ mày biết tay tao.
Good translate.
Once you get home, you will understand my hand. You will understand the literal reality of my hand. And me and my sister, we sitting back. We on the way home. We're like, oh, bro, this is gonna be bad. This is gonna be bad. You all look. That line was one. So the other one would be quỳ xuống, right? Right? Get on your knees.
Mặc vô tường. Do you hear about that?
Yeah. Mặc vô tường. Yeah. Quỳ xuống.
Face the wall. You kneel down and then you face the wall. That's the whole Vietnamese discipline as a kid.
Exactly. And the third one was they would once they have had you do something. Well, once you've done something wrong, they try. My parents put in this accountability of you have to say that you are sorry and you will never do it again. Right? So, xin lỗi mẹ, mai mốt con không dám nữa. Right? That was, I'm sorry, Mum, but I won't do it again.
No, but the way không dám nữa means I won't dare to do it in the
Exactly
future.
right. I promise I will never dare to do that again.
Yeah.
So instilling that fear was within the script. You know what I mean? It was in place there. So I think that's just the stuff that I remember. I don't know if I'll maybe those lines were good. I might keep that for my kids, but I'm not sure.
People still hit their kids though?
Do people still hit their kids?
I don't know.
Nah, I like the my wife and kids style of parenting. Michael Kyle, anyone watch my wife and kids?
Yeah.
You know, it's the psychological turmoil that really teaches lessons.
Yeah.
And I think I really enjoy that. So I'll watch my wife and kids episode with my partner and be like, babe, take notes. This is how I'm gonna do it. Right.
Yeah.
You have to look at
the blast from the
the
past.
fear from the eye. Like I think has to be a good balance between the world is your oyster and you can do whatever it is that you can to achieve what you want. But the other part is also the bigger pain and regret in the long term is actually unused potential or misused potential. I think that is something that will be an early lesson for my kids, because I think that is something that gets them to engage a lot faster. Does that make sense? Because I feel like that would have worked. I mean, that has worked on me. Like, don't get me wrong, means of doubt to say you can't do that was a good riser for me. But I think, misplaced talent or misplaced potential, I think is a bigger fear than once you recognize it or embrace it with yourself, is a good motivating factor.
Yeah. How have you been able to work past that and through it? Because it's obvious that you see a lot of potential and a lot of skills in yourself that you could take on the world, right? And so how have you been able to move past the seeds of doubt and also move past the seeds of doubt from your own mother saying, hey, don't get your hopes up with this job, right? Because other people might not have the mindset that you do, that you can power your way through it. Hey, you watch me, right? Maybe others think, oh, wait, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not good enough. And then get absorbed into all that doubt as well.
I think it's very easy to say, I've mastered it. I'm good now. Like, I no longer think about my family's, all those doubts anymore because I'm just the shit now because I've just grown up and that's who I am. I think that's easy to say that. But realistically, those whispers in your own mind, when you sleep again, you think all the stuff that you've heard or processed in the years just disappears? Hell no. You're definitely going to think again, like, can I really do this? Like, even when I do these people behind the music projects or when I do, try and create a particular type of series or content, there's always self-doubt. There's always, maybe you don't, maybe nobody cares, but also maybe you can't do it. I think it's an ongoing battle. Like any particular relationship with a certain feeling or a certain substance or a certain activity. You always, your relationship with it is only as good as your last engagement with it. So I'd say to overcome this sense of self-doubt, as much as it's a whisper in the back, I think it's your next project or your next self-expression. It's easy to say, I'm going to get over it on my next shift at my job. But whatever avenue that you're going to go towards next, that is of your own creative volition. Doesn't have to be a video, doesn't have to be anything. As long as it's something that you did that was the cause of, of something, you will, your confidence and your self-doubt will be eased or subside for a minute. Or for a period, because you're just off the high of something that you did, right? Because sometimes it's naturally just reacting to the effects of other causes. When you're not the cause of it, like say you're causing this podcast to happen, this is something that will allow for this sense of expression. And it may or may not reach the right people to hear it, but at least it's there. The opportunity doesn't occur without you being the cause. Yeah.
So what stories are you looking forward to producing next? What stories are you on the lookout within the Vietnamese community?
My next story. It's a good question. I think there's one. I recently found VHS tapes of my parents, and everyone has their preconceptions with their parents. Like it's very easy to go. I was telling you, like I hated my mum when she was trying to hit me when I was trying to learn ABC. To watch that back now, I think it's very interesting to see two people who were probably lost just like you,
Of course.
and kind of very much embrace that. I think there might be a series of stories or content I'd like to produce in that direction to kind of grab that, to kind of elicit that sense of embrace of your own background and ask your parents.
Yeah.
With my stories, I hope that the listeners or kids want to ask about their parents. Because at a certain point, they're getting old, they're balding, they're, becoming, their memory's not going to be that great anymore. You just don't know when that time is.
Yeah.
So
True.
I want the stories that I produce or the stories that I work on, I want them to have a sense of curiosity to their own history or to their own background.
Yeah.
So they can recognize how resilient their people are, like how resilient they are and can be. Do you know what I mean?
Vietnamese Australians.
Yeah, because I think you're right. One thing that I always say, which I don't know if it's a an echo in my own head, but it's like Vietnamese doesn't have any heroes, has never had a hero that you felt unified with. And, we talked about this, like, who's your hero? I said, technically should be my dad. But my dad doesn't talk too much about it. My dad doesn't talk about fighting pirates that often, and sometimes he might have, his own addictions that he himself is having to go through, right, as a result of, his rise and falls of his own life. Right? My dad's a big drinker. And with that, he only speaks honestly and truthfully about what had happened when he's drunk.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to share that because that's something that, it's very easy to be that, that uncle that has a problem and nobody wants to talk about. Right? But, I've experimentally pried in which I asked to understand the timeline of his life whilst, he's coming from being drunk. And I try to understand at what point did he meet my mum before his first marriage? Which point did he decide to bring her over here? What chapter happened next? To understand this thing and no longer feel a sense of resentment for previous moments where he's been drunk.
Yeah.
I think is a growth for me. But yeah, I think, what was the question again? Do you remember the question that you were telling?
No, I can't remember my initial question.
Oh, what story encourages it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So his for his era and what his challenges are. Say if it's like he's got a thing for drinking, I think it's to really recognize him as a hero, you got to kind of see how resilient he was to either move from one country to another by boat, try the different businesses he did to actually get his money.
Yeah.
And then build a life with your mum. Because let's be real, like, Vietnamese, they will go from one business to another business and have no shame in that they're just moving their resources into a different avenue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas the next generation, like, oh my God, I failed on this. I'm just going to take my time off social media, be quiet and just maybe do a job for a while, and just, there's a lot of attachment to when your last post or what you did last was and how cool it was. And, the ups and downs of business and economics for my dad and technological advancement, he had like an embroidery factory.
Yeah.
He had employees. He had like a Nissan 300ZX with a girl on top of it, like a pretty graphic on it.
Yeah.
He flew back to Vietnam because he could. And, even though, the Vietnamese community of Australia would, would basically spot out people who went back to Vietnam during that time of war to be like, oh, you're going back to the country that we fled from. You must worship that political agenda. Sure. Right? But for him, he's just gone back to find his next chapter, meet my mum, Yeah. And see, go back for a holiday.
Yeah.
So for him to have the finances to do that during that time, you don't register it, but it's massive,
True. Yeah.
right?
So he received hate from
Yeah,
it.
so Bao Nhân Nguyen, the newspaper that a lot of Vietnamese in Australia
Sure.
read,
Yeah.
one of the things I found out from asking him whilst he was drunk was when he went back, right, he's got 11 family members, right? So a good amount of them came over
Yeah.
through the boat.
Yeah.
Some went to America, some went to Vietnam. But when he went to the airport, he told me that they would take photos of him and basically put him in the newspaper and say, person A, B, C, and D are supportive of the current political agenda in Vietnam.
Yeah.
That's why they're going back.
Yeah.
And they put that in the newspaper and say maybe you should not be involved with them, right? So my dad expressed that. Yeah.
Yep.
My dad expressed that. I didn't know this, right? Especially when I work for SBS Vietnamese, right? Back then, I thought I wasn't that involved or know much about the VCA, to be honest. I just I knew that SBS, would be around their events, would provide footage around coverage around their events.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that back then they targeted my dad or my dad's brothers and said, "This is people you should not be messing with because they support the communist agenda by going back."
Right.
But for them, for my dad's side, he was just like, "I made money. I'm going to go back and party. I'm going to see if I can find my next wife or enjoy my life there."
Sure. But he got cancelled by the community for.
I think he definitely
going
feels
back to
he doesn't.
the homeland.
Yeah, I think he felt ostracized a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it was like back then for the Vietnamese community, right? But I think that's why a lot of Vietnamese business people kind of, don't try to be too politically skewed.
Of course.
Because then it becomes a lot harder for you to profit either in current Australian Vietnamese engagements or Vietnamese to Australia engagements.
Yeah.
Countries, leaders of the world probably want to ensure that there's harmony among each country and, international relations, right? But yeah, Vietnamese people who, are in the VCA, what I've come to recognize, it seems like there is there's always been a barrier to help because one side of my parents were like, go to Vietnam, go and learn, go and have fun, go and build relationships with your family members,
Cousins and all that. Yeah.
The other side is, but just be wary of being next to the yellow flag and three stripes because you may not be able to fly back to Vietnam. They might bar you, and I was always confused about this, bro. I didn't understand why.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now being a part of this, SBS Vietnamese, learning about this in my own community, you start to embrace like being Vietnamese is kind of like a flagless. You being Vietnamese Australian or Vietnamese American, it's like you're a flagless community, right?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like because if you pick a flag, you win the strike. You win the side, right? So being Vietnamese is up to your own definition now. Like the way Chong Ali says this, it's you're a third culture kid.
Yep.
For you to rep Vietnamese is just being a good person or achieving your success in whatever direction, and help other Vietnamese people that are around you or in your community. And I felt I hadn't achieved much, but I wanted to help Chong Ali or these artists because their art was meaningful to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this being a flagless community, I hope that other Vietnamese are kinder to each other. Don't separate yourself from the fobs. Like our era, part of us was like, nah, they're coming over. We don't want to talk to them because they speak English weird.
Yeah.
And they probably feel that because they don't speak English weird, you don't want to hang out with them as well. Now I play badminton with international students, and I'm like, I'm fake Vietnamese because I'm not Vietnamese for real. Không có nói tiếng Việt giỏi bằng mấy bạn.
Yeah.
But I know enough to understand their comedy or their the humor.
Yeah, of
right?
course. Yeah.
So, be kinder to each other. Even the Vietnamese born here, like it's easy to be stuck in your clique of friends. But there's a bunch of us who like want to achieve great things. You can always put a supporting leg in, but it's a two-way street because you can mentor others, but if they don't want to, you can't help a man who doesn't want to be helped as well, right? So I'd say just and overall, just be better to each other, right? Be better to each other than our parents were.
You're right. That's a really interesting topic that you mentioned, right? The lack of kindness and somewhat racism that people have showed from Vietnamese people being born here to international students or those coming in, right? Yes, their capacity for English is not as great because we're native speakers here. We went to school and did many hours, countless hours of English. So yeah, I think it's a really important point that be kinder to all flavors of Vietnamese people. And growing up here, I had this conception that, oh yeah, all Vietnamese people here are coming from refugee backgrounds, but you don't realize the diversity of Vietnamese people that are here, right? You've got your, like our parents, or my parents especially, refugees from after the war. Then you've got kids of refugee migrants from after the war. Then you've got international students and economic migrants and different classifications and different segments of the Vietnamese community, and how really diverse we are as well. Doesn't matter which flag they prefer. It's a flagless. You mentioned this concept of a flagless identity, which is of the first time I've heard it, to be honest.
And to be Vietnamese and just go, oh yeah, you're Vietnamese, and yeah, we're all the same. I don't think that used to be a going thought. Yeah, my people, we're from different eras. We're Vietnamese of different time frames.
True.
Right. So, the SBS talks a lot about being, creating content that creates social cohesion.
Yeah.
So that social cohesion part, not everyone's journey or trip was the same.
True.
So then it's very hard to socially cohere. You can only do that by how you act and deal with each other, every day. Don't separate yourself, because that's a relationship that you could help them with and they could help you with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, say for example, I would hope that artists in Australia would be able to perform in Vietnam, and that'd be cool.
Right? Yeah.
But it's more politically challenged than you and me think it is. Right. And I didn't know that. But it's one of those. That's why you can only, I guess, just be kinder and better to each other. Like, extend help, even if they're, they don't speak English as good as you. That you don't speak it, you might not speak as good as Vietnamese as them, but include them too.
What really supercharged my empathy in this space was being interviewed by you on SBS, right? Having to speak a language, although my mother tongue, in Vietnamese, but I know what I wanted to say, but I didn't have the words to say it. I couldn't articulate it. So it was like a cat got my tongue, for example. It was this frustration that the feelings got stuck because I couldn't articulate that. And yeah, as a result of that, it's made me kinder and more patient in speaking with others who English might not be their first language as well. So yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up, to be kinder to
That's right.
all walks of life.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like, you think about the mentality of like Vietnamese who don't want to speak English too much because they get afraid to get it wrong. We have the same thing, just backwards.
Yeah, true.
Right? Con không hiểu đại sư. Can we just speak English? Right? It's the same psychology. It's just backwards, and just encourage each other to get it wrong, because then I can help you, or you can help me. Right?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say the wrong thing, and it's better to help you fix it than it is to try to be like, oh, you got that wrong, sucker. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So, dude, what a incredible conversation we've had so far. We're only going to go for like half an hour, and look at us now.
Is it half an hour? Oh,
no, so usually how we wrap up the episode is we ask our 3 questions, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what are you grateful for?
What am I grateful for? I'm grateful for the position I play within our community in Australia. Being involved with SBS, I didn't think I would be doing it. I sent a message to my friend who we went to Viet school with, and I remember just me and her, we would just take the piss out of learning the language. But now I'm in this position where I have the ability to, the content that I create, it's exposed to both generations before and generations after.
Absolutely.
So the responsibility in how to develop this social cohesion, with the different sectors of Vietnamese, and unifying them through that content, I think is what I'm grateful for, that opportunity to do that.
And so the next question is, what have you realized?
What have I realized? What have I realized? I'm realizing everything every day. Something every day. What am I realizing? There's always more context. It's not as simple as, it's not black and white. There's always more context to whatever it is that we're looking at.
Yeah.
A person's not successful because they were born with that steed. There's probably got to be beyond the thirst of I don't have money and I need to achieve something, because we're always looking for those stories of success, right? And we're hoping that they're just the magical, the lucky lottery that just pulled and they succeeded. But I think I'm realizing that there's more layers to any particular event or story or any direction. Yeah.
It's more than meets the eye.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's the word.
And our last question we like to wrap up is, what is a question that you ask yourself?
What is a question I ask myself?
Yeah.
Who am I serving today?
Who are you serving today? Beautiful. Michael, what a joy, what a pleasure to sit down and chop it up with you. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
It's really nice to be on the other side. Asking you your travels on SBS. I mean, it's nice.
Yeah. So where can people find your work?
They can find me on Instagram, Michael Husky. They can also find me on SBS Vietnamese, sbs.com.au/Vietnamese. And you look up in the search tab Michael Husky Nguyen, you'll be able to find all the stories that I've produced. You can find me on Facebook and TikTok, and that's it. People behind the music as well on social media. But yeah, that's me.
Cool. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks, Michael.